which means we're going to item number 28. This is mine. Discussion and possible action regarding the use of one-time landfill lease revenue in the amount of $3,600,000. Let me tell you what I would like to do here, and then Ms. Tina can tell us what we can do. We have asked our citizens to conserve water, and they have done it. They have done it this royally. And the water rates, the water usage has gone down. We have now about a $2.3 million deficit in our operating budget of our water department. Less funds. That's not the right word, but.
In the water department at the end of August, there was a deficit or a loss in that fund of about 1.8 million.
Okay.
So that's the current number, the most current number.
Okay. So we have picked up a little bit because it was over 2 million.
I think it was close to 2 million.
Because of summer months, of course,
yes, sir.
we pick up a little.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, we've got almost a $2 million deficit in our operating portion of the water department. And since we asked our people to conserve, and they did conserve, I do not want to go back and say, now we need to raise your water rates because you didn't use water and your water has gone up. So this $3.6 million is a one-time fee that we received from the Republic. It was a negotiated fee that Shane Kelton brought for us. It's a one-time fee. I propose that we take this $3.6 million of a fee, that we apply whatever the deficit is in the water operating. If it's $1.8 million, let's apply $1.8 million to it, and let's put the rest of this money in a citizen's account. I think this money ought to be used for the citizens. I think it ought to be used for things that the citizens want. I don't think it ought to be something that we use for city payroll or for city. I would like to take this money and let the citizens enjoy it. So I propose that we pay off this deficit, bring it up to zero, and put the rest of it in an unassigned fund. And then if we need this, this is something that we as council members could pull out. Just to give you an example, last year Carl came to us needing money for the Riverfest he was putting on. And we told him, no, we're not going to give you any money. And we didn't, and he ran a deficit, but he brought it back. This is a perfect fund. This is something that is for our citizens. It's something for the good of our citizenry. This is money that we could pull from, and if we need it for something else, all we have to do is pull it out. It's not lost, it's not hidden, but it's money that we have put in an unassigned account for things that we need. It's a savings account, and I've been told not to use the word rainy day fund, but it is an unassigned fund, which is similar to a rainy day fund for things that we might need in the future. That's what I'd like to do with it, and I need 3 people to go with me and say, yes, that's what we need to do with it.
Okay, I would just like to remind you as well, I know that we discussed this last week with you, that there is also a deficit currently in the landfill fund of negative $2.3 million. And so I know that you'd want to cover that as well.
And we have the money in place to cover that because we, for the last several years, have been building a landfill closure fund. And there is in the excess right now, according to my knowledge, of $3 million in that fund. That is enough to take care of the deficit we have in the landfill fund. And in the new proposal under the new contract, Republic is responsible for the $8.4 million that we need to close the landfill. So they're already putting almost $4 million into the fund, and they will add to this $187,000 per year.
I'm sorry.
So that when the landfill is full, the money will be there to close it. So the citizens have already started this fund; they've been saving. So I say take that and apply it to the
right, and that is the plan for the landfill. The trust has not yet been established, but we expect that to be established by the end of this month, hopefully. What I would propose is that we wait until year end to see where, the water fund, the landfill fund, all of the funds stand, and then make a decision on it.
I have no problem with that.
And I thought maybe we come back in November to do the water rebate and analyze that. Maybe that would be a good time to discuss the rest of this as well.
I would like to get a vote on this, that we accept the concept. And as far as waiting a month or two to put this into the new budget year, I don't have a problem with that at all, so that we can see how everything lines out.
Okay.
But I'd like to get a vote on this. I don't want citizens have to pay for something we ask them to do. And this, to me, this one-time shot, this is the perfect way that all of our citizens can profit from the deal that Shane negotiated with Republic. So, I'm gonna make a motion that we take this $3.6 million, that we pay off the deficit in our water operating, and that we put the rest of it in an unassigned savings account for future citizen needs, and that this be done after we enter our new budget year when we know exactly what we need.
Well, is there any difference in what I'm about to ask and what you're saying is if we take these funds and add it to our landfill closure reserve and the end of this month or in October, look at what the final numbers are before we apply to deficits? I mean, is that saying the same thing, Michael?
Right, well, the closure reserve is now being provided for through the contract. So there will be a trust set up. At the end of each year, we will book the liability to the correct amount per the actuarial values, and then the trust will be brought up to that same amount. And so that will be a wash. Of even amount. And so what the mayor's referring to is that this $3.3 million that you see up here would be released because before we've had it reserved in the landfill fund balance.
That landfill budget will take care of itself. That's gonna wash. Don?
What were you going to do if the mayor didn't come up with this? What were you going to do with that $1.8 million?
That would be a question for Shane and for city management, I believe.
The $1.8 million that the mayor refers to is a net loss this year.
Right.
It's an operating loss. The fund balance in the water fund exceeded that. So what you would be seeing is a significant reduction in the fund balance in the water fund. And that would be one of the things we'd be talking about as we consider what rates should be, what revenues should be. Should we be selling water or conserving water? All of that has an impact on that fund. All of that ultimately impacts that fund balance. So,
And don't we have a study on that now?
the council approved the concept of the study, and I believe the utilities folks are have received proposals, but that's as far, you're on that
I
committee?
am on that committee, yes.
Why don't you tell us where you're at on that?
We have set up a meeting to review the proposals for next week. So,
Well, and where I'm headed, this rabbit that I'm chasing is, if we can come up with something different, maybe we could have the whole 3.2 instead of making $1.8 million out of it somewhere down the line is what I was looking at.
another solution for the water fund? I'm sorry, I misunderstood your previous question, so. For the water fund, for the $1.8 million deficit in the water fund, okay.
Ultimately, it's a good thing to have this money and try to decide what to do with it. And so I think from the staff's perspective, we'd like to get through year end. We'd like to make sure that the trust gets set up so that liability is covered. We'd like the dust to somewhat settle on those revenues and expenditures, so we've got a better idea exactly where we end up. In the water fund, we should be selling tons of water this time of year. However, we haven't had that many days over 100, and we've had a little bit of rain, and so we may not have as much recovery this time of year as we'd hope financially in the water fund. But I'm sure we're going to end up with some kind of a net loss in the water fund. Staff did work hard Shane and Patrick worked very hard to negotiate a positive deal, and it does create some resource, whether that stays in the landfill fund for future needs there, or is used in the general fund or some other fund for other citizen needs. It's a good discussion to have because we're talking about resources we have rather than how are we going to fund something.
I just know that somebody's gonna have to pay for that deficit. And we can either go back and charge everyone in the city that we asked to conserve.
Excuse me, and I was going to say, I like the concept, I like the idea. I'm going to second your motion, and if we have to wait a couple of months to see how everything pans out, that's fine.
Yeah.
If we have to change our idea at the end, so be it. But right now, that's a very good concept to move forward on. So I'm going to second that and see where that ends up at the end of the year.
I don't want our citizens to have to pay for it. And this is money that takes care of it. Rodney?
Let's put this in the layman's terms. We got 1.8 million that we're deficit on. How much money is in that fund right now?
What do you mean, how much
The
money?
fund balance,
Or-
what's the fund balance?
Oh, we're not negative 1.8 million, I mean, it's
That's
just
correct. I
down.
think the fund balance is just right over $1 million right now. So
So-
it's, I think it's $1,067,000, somewhere around there.
So there's money in there, it's just 1.8 million lower than where it should be.
That's correct.
So I want to make sure that the public understands this, because there are some people that are out there that are thinking that there's 10, $15 million in this account, whatever, and just because we're down this one year, we should be able to fall back on what's left in there. Well, in reality, there's about $1 million or less in there, correct?
That's correct.
That's right. With an operating budget of $23 million. So.
Right. I mean, it's scary low.
It's
that
low.
we would take it down that far.
And if we have to pull money out of the capital improvements part of the water to make up this deficit, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot there. So this deficit has to be made up. And this is the perfect way to make it up. It is money that our citizens don't have to pay, and it helps everyone in our city.
Tina, is that $1,067,000 you just mentioned, is that less than we have? I mean, the $1.8 million, I know we're in the deficit. Is that the difference between what we have now and we had last year? Or what is the difference?
The beginning fund balance in that fund for this year was about $3.1 million.
Okay.
So it is down. And that is year-to-date with encumbrances, that amount that I just told you at the end of July, so.
Marty?
Is there a problem with just waiting and putting this back on the agenda after we see where we stand?
No, but I don't have a problem with putting a 90-day hold on it until we see. I'd like to get it approved. I'd like to get this money earmarked so that citizens know that that we are conscious that there is a deficit, and we're conscious that we have a way to pay it off, and that we're not going to be going to them to pick up this $1.8 million. But if we want to put it in there and put a 90-day hold until we see just exactly how our budget year is going to work, I don't have a problem with that.
It's the same difference.
It's the same difference. But I'd like to go ahead and earmark this, and we do have a second, so we're gonna have to take a vote on it. I'd like to go ahead and earmark this and get it in there. If we want to put a 90-day hold on it until the first of the year, I don't have a problem with that. Till we know exactly what we're working with and have firm numbers. But I want this money while it's there before we get somewhere else.
I don't want it going anywhere right now, so I think it's gonna sit there. I just would, I'm gonna vote against it. I'm all in support, I'm in support of it in theory. I would just rather wait until the end and see where we stand in case we don't have to move 1.8, we could move 1.5, couldn't we? And work with 2.5 and then if we needed some somewhere else, so.
And that's what we're doing. It's just we're moving the 3.6 to a fund that would take care, earmark for the water operating deficit, and the rest of it sitting there for a citizen need. So, you know, whether we do it today or whether we do it in,
It have to be two funds.
Well,
Yes.
yes, it
actually,
would have to be two funds. An unassigned savings and to pay off the water deficit.
Yeah, it could be.
and our action today will be to direct staff to bring that back in November
Right.
for
Is that-
consideration. But to put staff on notice that you do have an intended use for that.
I want it earmarked.
We
For the
can-
council?
We can track that. We can
I'm
keep
kind
an eye
of,
on it.
I'm kind of with Marty on this. I'm kind of nervous about this. It seems like it's the cart before the horse type situation where I definitely want us to pay so that the citizens don't have to pick up the tab on the water. Because they did do what
Yes,
I
they
asked
did.
them and what all of us have asked them to do is conserve water, and therefore we're not selling water. But I wish that we'd wait until November to take any vote on this, and that way we'd have firm numbers to know exactly how much is gonna go into that savings account, how much is gonna go into, for the deficit of our water account.
Well, let me rephrase my motion. I would like to take the $3.6 million and I would like to apply whatever is necessary at the first of the year to take care of the operating deficit in the water department, operating budget, and put the rest of it in an unassigned savings account for citizen needs. Will you redo your second?
I'll pull my first second and second.
That way we're not using dollars. We're just earmarking the money.
Okay.
And my main thing is getting rid of that deficit. Man,
Yes.
we have the money there. Let's wipe the
I
slate
don't wanna-
clean and start all over.
I don't wanna take a chance on losing this. These are our
We
citizens.
do, we always do.
And we could lose it if we don't earmark it. That's why I wanted earmarked. But I'll take the money, the amounts out and just say, let's use it for these purposes. Okay. Any further counsel? Turner?
Yes, my name is Jim Turner, and this takes and addresses a short-term problem we have now. I think what might also be appropriate at this time is on the long-term, look at using all of the utility revenues, which includes landfill, franchise fees, water, sewer, etc., as kind of a first stop fund. If there's a shortfall in water, for example, if they have a profit, a really good year in landfill waste disposal, use that to support the other utilities. Have the utilities kind of grouped together as, if there's a utility problem, we look at all the utility revenue before we have a rate increase. So if landfill is doing great right now, it helps subsidize water. If water's doing better than landfill, it would help that way. And pool that together when you're looking at these rate structures, because they all come on the same bill to the ratepayer. And it gives you some flexibility and it gives you some stability you don't have, especially if you could have that continuing revenue helping to pay for infrastructure. And a lot of them have common infrastructure. And I think that long-term is a philosophical shift and maybe even restructuring that needs to be made. All of those different funds now are under the same supervision, and having them supporting each other officially by policy makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I agree with Jim. I think that's a very good idea. And I think we've talked about this recently,
We have.
about combining departments and making sure that we don't have overlap on, especially big vehicles that we talked about, big,
Well, Daniel's working on that right now.
big pieces of equipment.
And I might add that we put this in this fund, you know, it takes 4 votes to move it.
Right.
So if the council finds something they want to, I mean, the money is there, it's an unassigned money, it takes 4 votes to use it, so
Can I
it's not
just
lost.
make
Yes,
one
ma'am.
point here? The combination of the negative $2.3 million in the landfill fund and the deficit of $1.8 million in the water fund exceeds the $3.6 million, so we still would need to look at other options to do both of those things. So that's why we thought it might be better to come back after year end to kind of see where everything falls, so.
Well, there's already a motion and a second on the floor, so
Okay.
we need to handle this today.
Okay.
I'd like to earmark the money. And then if we find out in 3 months' time that it's not going to work,
Figure
then
out.
we can amend it. We amend our budget, you know, 12 times a year. So if we see that there's a problem, then we'll amend it. But I'd like to earmark this 3.6 while we have the opportunity.
No, they're not putting a dollar amount on it, right?
No,
Don't put, your last motion did not have a dollar amount.
no,
correct?
it just used.
Because then when it does come back and we don't have that money.
Then we've got to figure out how to
we ain't got no
allocate
money.
it. So.
I'm just saying $3.6 million is a total, but I'm not splitting it out.
Well, in order to reserve a portion of fund balance or to create a rainy day fund, there's a specific procedure that I think Tina needs to lead us through.
Right.
And so I think if this passes, staff will interpret this as direction at that November meeting to be prepared to walk us through those kinds of things.
November,
All right?
December. After we're into the budget and we know what we're
If
doing.
there's some left.
Well, each April and November, we have an ordinance on the books that requires staff to look at the fund balance in the water fund and to consider whether the rates, the revenue generated warrants or has created the situation where we can provide a rebate to ratepayers. We're going to do that in November anyway. We'll be discussing the results of operations, the net income or the net loss. That'll be the perfect time to discuss this opportunity. So if this passes, we're interpreting this as be ready to discuss this in November when you talk about the water fund balance.
And we have some firm figures. Any further comment? I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor of putting this $3.6 million into a fund that would be an unassigned savings and to pay the water deficit. Please say aye.
Aye.
Let's see some hands. Well, that's all of us. We'll put a 6-0 vote on that.